Thank you for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. This podcast is made possible by viewer and listener support. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider supporting it at patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. White Centipede Noise is a label and mail order based in Germany, releasing top quality noise on tape, CD, and vinyl. White Centipede Noise is also the premier EU-based distributor of international noise. Visit whitecentipedenoise.com to see available label releases and weekly distro updates. Hello and welcome to White Centipede Noise Podcast. My guest today is the most important harsh noise artist of the last 20 years. Please welcome Sam McKinlay of the RITA.
Hey
guys. Hi, Sam.
Hi. Thanks for the insane words.
A strong memory of mine when I was first exploring harsh noise and learning about it, and you know, some of the primary artists active at the time was I read an interview by you where you described your path and your, you know, journey towards harsh noise, and you described at some point you made a decision to make harsh noise the primary focus of your life, and that made a huge impact on me, just that statement. So I would like to know, first of all, kind of what are the steps that brought you to that point, but also what did that decision mean for you in your life? What does that mean exactly, or what did that mean to make harsh noise the primary focus of your life?
Well, basically, like, I was always like a fine arts student, and I was like in university and all that. So I was kind of, but before I did my BFA, like I went back and did my BFA. My circle of friends was all the guys from like Vote Robot. And basically, like, the world, just to kind of sum it up, it's kind of the world of Vancouver's Scratch Records and Zev Asher and Port Queen, and a lot of those guys were, you know, friends with the guys with the whole banana fish culture and everything. So I was lucky enough to be readily exposed to a lot of the really important kind of Western Canadian acts that were like involved in noise, and as I've spoken about before in like interviews and stuff, I was like a punk rock skateboarder kid, and I remember the Mike Neary issue of Thrasher had like an art article in there about like Big Black, and that was kind of like my first step as a kid, as a teenager, into getting into music that's like way more rough and just kind of like driven by like the harsh sound or whatever. Mm-hmm. So anyways, so after that, so as my friends were like doing their own distros and Vote Robot was happening and everything, they were giving me lots of Kevin Rivard of Vote Robot was giving me lots of like constant like inspiration and tips with like, you know, like, oh, here's Port Queen's new 7-inch, and I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome, you know. Yeah. And then like, oh, here's a bunch of like Zev Asher's work, like Nimrod, and even Costes was part of like Scratch Records back then and everything. I'm listening to all this, and then so things are just taking steps, right? Yeah. So this is the early 90s, yeah, and I'm loving it all, and at the same time, you know, I'm doing my BFA and everything as well. And I did my first 2 years of university, and then I was going to do my BFA right after this, basically. Mm-hmm. So then one day Kevin because by then we're bros, he's whatever, and he's just like, oh dude, you should hear this. So he hands me we always knew that that Steve Albini worked with KAK Null a lot. So then finally Kevin gave me a Null 7-inch, which was the first time I heard straight pummeling harsh note, like walls of harsh noise.
Yeah.
And then almost immediately right after that, we got in Merge Bell's Noise and Membrio.
Yep.
On disc, on the original old one.
Okay.
And then that was it. I mean, for tons of us, that was it. I was just like, okay, this is fucking perfect.
Yeah.
Like all I want to hear now.
Yeah.
So then after that, and then I just went nuts. Then another friend of mine and I, a girlfriend at the time, and I started to order off Self-Abuse. Like we got into it deep, like instantly.
Yeah.
So went off Self-Abuse, ordered tons of shit from like Relapse, and I was ordering shit from which I like to say is the golden time of harsh noise. So I luckily got like releases that are all just like, I'm a total like just getting into it, and I'm buying like the most now, thinking about it, the most crucial harsh noise releases of all time with no problem. Just you know what I mean?
Just send the money
so
and
then and then that's when like really early on, like my your tastes start to develop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, so you're hearing lots of Japanese noise first, and really rapidly you're just like, oh, like I like Macronympha.
Right.
Like, the Japanese noise artists are obviously masters, but I like Macronympha way fucking more.
Right.
And it's like, oh fuck, Skin Crime.
Yeah.
A lot. I like American noise.
Yeah.
Way more. You
Right.
know, like it's dirtier, it's crustier, it's like. And then the point in time that you're speaking about is when I finally got my hands on a Dead Body Love tape, lo-fi Power Carnage. Then that was when I was just like, okay, that's perfect. Like that's exactly what I want to hear. And it was just kind of like a completely overwhelming sense of just like, that's all I want to hear from now on is that sound. And now I want to like do it, because I was in the arts or whatever, so I had a mind for like doing doing stuff like whatever. And then of course I was lucky enough to have Kevin just be right there, and they had like a studio up in the upper floor of his house with like synthesizers and old like piles of broken microphones and distortions and delays and everything, and he would show me how to make it work, and just lock me in that room for hours at a time, and I just like recording tapes, and then started doing trades with Self-Abuse so I could get and then and it went from there. And then that's when I was like this is what I want to fucking do. And then, so I put out, a lot of my older tapes and albums and everything. And then went back to university to do my final 2 years and get my BFA. Mm-hmm. And that I really, really made moves to just kind of go back to like landscape art and painting and installation, which I thought was, for me, was good because I always like to approach any of my harsh sound or harsh noise via the arts, like via the visual arts, so then it totally just keeps me like in proper step. So whenever I reference anything I'm doing, it's got to be like the visual arts for me. Sure. And that's what just kind of keeps, and I use all the same kind of techniques of deconstruction and building and rebuilding and everything. But it's kind of, I'm kind of having an epiphany now after you asked the question of just like how early on, when you're getting barraged by all these releases that were around at the time, how your tastes can, if you're listening close enough, your tastes can really like tear down the exact sounds that you want to hear. Yeah. And then you go from there.
Yeah. So this episode of White Centipede Noise Podcast is brought to you by Screamin' Ride Distro and Absurd Exposition Label, Montreal-based source for experimental electronics, harsh noise, etc. Over 1,600 items in stock on all formats. Media mail shipping to the USA and affordable international shipping. Forthcoming tapes from the Rita, Mott and Violent Shogun, Andrew Nolan Misery Engine Split, Neural, Hermit Chick White Split, and Alex York, plus an expanded double LP reissue of Merzbau's 1998 psych noise mantra Aqua Necromancer. Visit screamandride.com and or absurdexposition.bandcamp.com. Did you ever incorporate any of your sound, because you started doing your sound noise work at that time, did you ever incorporate any of that in your BFA or in your studies at university?
Amazingly not at all. It's almost, I don't know, it was like, and I wasn't even really on purpose, but I was like, I was really, really fucking obsessed with art history.
Mm-hmm.
I really, I mean, because there's if you look at my discography, there's that weird, like, there's like a break in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was doing my BFA.
Sure.
And I don't know if it was subconscious, but I was just like, no, I'm back at it. I got to get heavy into the arts, like,
yeah.
And then, but it was good. But again, it's amazing because it's all like the ideas and the concepts and the manifestos and
yes.
And everything is what kind of drove it. It's all things I can translate into like my version or my harsh sound or harsh noise.
Did you ever feel like that decision to really focus on that was like a decision where you have to make certain sacrifices or in some way lonely, that you're somehow deviating from like choosing a path that is going to be somehow difficult or isolate you in life?
No, I mean, I've always kind of had one foot in the fine arts world, so I knew how to maneuver around so that I can integrate all the same ideas and everything in like applying for grants.
Sure.
And everything. So I always think of it as as just the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So whenever I like apply for a grant or whatever, it's like a media arts grant.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's nothing to do with music
Right.
at all. And what I really appreciated about it, I've obviously got my more like, I've got my releases that, like delve into like, like the heavy sexual with like splits with like mania and all that.
Right.
But it's just like, but what I always really, really loved about it as well was that it was when you're putting out, I'll just like start by the time I was at the end of my BFA, I was basically turning in works that were all notes.
Okay.
No real, with just diagram results.
Yeah.
So it was like, I remember my final work I did for my BFA was I parked myself at a local skate park, and I did a count, and I did some crazy old DOS diagrams, like printed out diagrams of how many kids hang out at the skate park and where, and in the parking lot and where, and then I put it through like this program I had at work. I worked at a video store at the time, and
mm-hmm.
And I kind of based it on like how many people like rent films and stuff, and then it spit out all of these crazy reports that are just like where kids hang out at a skate park,
yeah.
when they're at the park during the day and everything. And then I took a bunch of photographs of the park, and then I did like these transparent layovers that kind of showed the data of where the kids are hanging out related to like the actual maps of the park, like of the
mm-hmm.
skate park.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what I, and everyone else is doing at the end of the year, like these grandiose like installations and like, and
yeah,
art, and then I handed in a folder, like a binder, like here you go, and then by that time my instructors were like, yeah, this is the path Sam's on.
Yeah.
Like he worked for 2 years, like on these massive 30-foot like landscape work, like installations and everything. And this is how he's kind of ground it down. So,
yeah.
So what I really like about harsh noise and sound and harsh sound is that whenever you do like a work like that, you're framing it kind of the same. So it's just like all the ideas and the notes and the construction and everything is being turned in with the sound as well.
Yeah.
Which I really like. I mean, there's a lot of people that are which is completely understandable. There's a lot of people that are just like, no, it's just the sound. It's the harsh noise. You listen to it. This is the blank cover. Awesome. You know,
Right.
and I'm like, yeah, that's good. But for me, I'm super into fucking portraying all the ideas, portraying the processes, like everything. I remember there was a woman that I was doing my BFA with that she had this insane idea where she was going to take like thousands of eggshells, and she was peeling the like the embryonic like skin
Yeah.
out of all the eggshells and then putting them in this crazy pile. And she did it for like literally a month.
Wow.
And it was just like fucking gross and
Yeah.
like, but she had it really well. It wasn't all dirty. It was all well organized
Yes.
and all this kind of shit. And she did it for a month. And then she had like, she didn't have a breakdown, but she was just like, I don't know what to do with it. Like, you know, and then we had, you know, we had our critiques and everything. And a lot of us in the class and the instructor were like, you did it.
Yeah.
You did the piece.
Yeah.
Like, now you have this giant, massive mound of eggshells, and you have this giant, massive mound of the I can't even remember what it was, like the lining of the egg.
Yeah.
And that kind of hit me where it's just like, you know, during those critiques or whatever, it was all for her. It was all about the
process.
The process, and the result is that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Do you work that way still
So-
with harsh noise? I mean, I know, of course, you do to a degree, but I mean, have you worked in that same sort of scope with as many diagrams and plans and notes as you did at that time? Do you still work that way?
Oh yeah. Like, it's because I mean, for me, that's where all the work is.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of the time, you go through years and years and years of trying to figure out gear and like the bias on fuzz effects and all that kind of stuff, and like, you know, getting things custom made for you and everything to such a point that you can, for like, if I'm working on a release, it's like, especially like, I mean, especially if it's like, you know, like one example recently is like all of those Wisp
Yes.
recordings I've been doing.
Yeah.
They're like in Shakespeare's plays. So like, if I'm doing a piece on all of the Catherine characters
Yeah.
from history, and then from it's that's like tons of reading, tons of finding images, tons of like thematic inspiration, and then like writing and everything.
Right.
Or, you know, and especially the classical ballet as well. It's just like, and then you work out exactly what you want to, what audio samples that I want to like work with and kind of grind down into like the eventual sound.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and that takes a long time as well. It's like, I'm going to watch all of 5 hours of like Henry the Shakespeare his histories, like all the way up to Richard the Third, and then I'm going to sample every woman's dialogue from like one part of that or whatever,
Right.
and then write about it, and then but it's neat because I know exactly what is going to happen with it, you know.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times the execution just takes maybe a day or two,
Sure.
whereas all of the notes and all the other work was like weeks, right?
And you probably have
Which happened when I did my BFA a lot too. It was like I knew exactly what I was going to do. I knew exactly all the wood I was going to get at the store,
Yeah.
you know, but just like, here's all the, you know, but doing all the diagrams and like the thematics and
Yeah.
like, and everything. It's just like when I went to the hardware store and brought it all back, it only took a day to build it.
Yeah.
Because I knew exactly what I wanted. Right?
So then you probably have your kind of ecstatic moments in the preparation process when you know what the result will be. You know you're processing, but when you find these sources or you find these moments or whatever it is that's you know that must be very simply exciting experience.
There's things that like that. Oh yeah, no, it's amazing, especially when it's working. You're just like, oh fuck yes, like I knew that would happen. Or, you know, things will pop up where like I had no idea
Yeah.
that when this dancer walks across the stage at that one point, it was going to create the biggest part of the sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, those are the fun things where you're just like, oh yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember years ago I did that a release. I think it came out on 7-inch. That was all hours and hours and hours of spaghetti western gunfights that I sampled, like pre-recorded sampled into this one, perfect like 5-minute mound of like gunfight without any music. I mean, that was a hard Italian western, like spaghetti western, no music, no dialogue, just the gunfights, right? And I was like, this is going to be fucking perfect. Like, this might be the greatest sound source ever. Like, and then I was like so excited about it. And then I'm like, here we go. And I'm running it through. And then I'm just like, the ricochets. I didn't fucking think about the ricochets. And to me, that just sounded like shit. So it's just like these perfect cracks, like crack. And I'm like, yes. And then, and I'm like, oh, what the fuck? So it sounded like lasers.
You couldn't get that
out. So
out.
Then I had to like go through and edit out. Edited out every ricochet laser.
Oh, you did? Wow.
And then I think, I remember also like buying. I remember Dan Electro at that time had that crazy fucking octave. What was it called again? The Chili Dog. And then like you could actually get rid of a lot of the high end that way as well. But I remember that was just like the funniest thing because it was like the most like, oh yes, the ricochet.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of it, right?
But so,
anyways, yeah.
So, like, do you have then? You don't have then like a rule? Because for me, that in my mind, like conceptually, that would bother me if I had planned this source and I was following some sort of rule. Like, I wouldn't allow myself to cut out the ricochets. I would did you find a way to process it, or did that cause a conflict in your concept at all?
Not at all, because I knew that the sound, like, again, this is just an example, so it kind of applied to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. This was just the most extreme example, but I knew that the theme and the sound and everything was that initial gun strike. Mm-hmm. So if it was just going to be a bunch of extra dumb work to get rid of the ricochet, to get rid of the, like most of them, or process them, then everything the idea is completely still there. Okay,
cool.
So it didn't matter at all, But that's just like one example. Yeah. It was, really black and white.
Have you ever considered presenting your like final releases with all of the notes and diagrams like you did for your BFA? Have you ever considered doing a release that really fully shows that whole process?
There's a lot of my releases do include as much of the imagery as possible and everything. When I write the notes, especially these days, what I'll do is I'll kind of like take my favorite passages that I read during all of those, during the studies or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm really, really, I love putting exactly what the source is as well. Yeah. Because that's like one of my like things that I'm just like, no, like I want people to know. I mean, part of this piece is that this is completely taken from this. Yeah. So that's it. So that's part of the notes as well. But I mean, most of the notes I have are like crap people don't. I mean, harsh noise nerds might want to know, but like crap, like make sure you grab that one cable when you when you lay out this chain. Okay, it's not going to work. Like with asterisks and shit. Like remember that. Yeah. That the bias on this pedal you had made for you isn't as good as this one, so don't waste 2 fucking hours trying to like get it to. Whatever,
I think that'd be totally fast. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you want to give that up, but I think that'd be totally fascinating to have those notes with a release. I think that'd be simply. I mean another really important one, but I think that'd be really, really interesting for a lot of people.
Yeah, and then I mean, it was an incredible opportunity as well to be able to do that book for amphetamine sulfate as well, where it was basically just like. where I was starting to just be like, the Rita, for me, like all the ideas and all that kind of, and everything, and the themes and the inspiration and the samples themselves are just as important as the end result. Yeah. One example would be that book, you know. So it's kind of like, so I'm like, in early discussions, I was like, no, I'd really like to title the book "The Rita." Like, this is the Rita release. Right. So, and then like Scott Kinberg and those, you know, and those guys that took like a really big risk of putting out that sample only release years ago.
Right.
Which just got issued as well. And I was just kind of like, okay, well, like, and for a lot of people that know me, they were like, yeah, this fucking tape is more the Rita than the Rita.
Right.
You know, it's just pure idea.
Yeah.
Right. Which I loved. I was just like, yeah, it's like the package, like the, you know.
Sure. When you do analyze sound, either your own work or when you're listening to it, you know, you've used often language like lines, talking about harsh noise, specific lines, and I'd like to kind of know your definition of that, but also kind of know, do you have other sort of language or definitions for different sonic characteristics, or some sort of language that you've developed? I mean,
lines come again directly from just like when, you know, like from art history for me. Like when you think of our artists like George Tracus or you know, or Richard Serra, or like, you know, a lot of the guys, and like a lot of their early notes and all that kind of stuff. It's so whenever I think of like it's weird. I don't even really think of it in like waveforms either. Mm-hmm. I think of it as like a drawn line that has parts that are like that crack out or whatever. Yeah. But it's, I was asked to do like an artist talk a while ago, like a workshop where I think it was for, I can't remember if it was for a university like SFE. I can't remember. But anyways, Vancouver's Anju Singh from the Nausea or whatever, mm-hmm. like worked it out for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I did this workshop where everybody brings in a sound, like a piece of sound that they do. And then the whole thing was about, just kind of like interpreting all of it in the visual, like in lines, mm-hmm. or whatever. So we had like these giant pieces of like paper out, where it's like, as we're listening to like somebody's piece, I'll be drawing a line, mm-hmm. or a piece I brought in, or drawing a line or whatever. And then, but we were talking a lot about being completely immersed in sound and being obsessed with sound as like potential entertainment, or why you enjoy it.
Yeah.
So in a lot of the parts on the line, I'd be like, okay, well, let's circle this part here, and then we'll put that part under a microscope, and see if that part of the sound is just as entertaining as the part of as a whole.
Yeah.
You know, so it was a lot of thinking about it. And so, you know, when you listen to one of my favorite Merzbow albums is Pink Cream. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the ones I got, like, you know, like when it came out.
Yeah.
And Pink Cream was really, really, and I've already listened to all the, like a bunch of the Italians. I already had all my new favorites or whatever. So anyway, so I'm listening to Pink Cream, and it's a really chaptered Merzbow recording, mm-hmm. where you can actually kind of like put parts under a microscope and be like, this part's fucking incredible. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so that's, you know, like when you're thinking of it as kind of like looking at it like a line piece, and you're picking that part, and that's when you start thinking more about like Dead Body Love and Mauthausen Orchestra and everything, and you're just kind of thinking like of the artists that really have their heads wrapped around the fact that if there's one part of these really, really, really busy harsh noise records that you fucking love. Yeah. Can you love that piece of it for an hour straight?
Right.
You know? So it's kind of like.
So when you talk about parts, are you talking about like 5 seconds or 10 seconds? Are you talking about microseconds? Are you talking about like?
Yeah, no, it'd be like a block. You know, when you're listening to like a macro record,
Yeah,
like you're listening to like humans, and like for how dirty and fucking and like crunchy macro is, it's an incredibly dynamic project, right?
Yeah.
So you can do the same thing, and parts, especially when you're like listening to a bunch of harsh noise in like a live environment,
Yeah.
and there's like just like all the different sounds are like jumping around, and then suddenly the artist will just, and you see like people reacting to all the different parts, like being like and then
yeah,
and then you know what I mean, and then that's when you really start thinking like, well, what if you just did that part that you're losing your mind over, but for like an hour?
Yeah.
Will you lose your mind for a fucking hour? You need the surrounding lasers and hits and dynamics to amplify the difference of that part.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of that, and then that's when you start thinking about, like the term that's now turned into Frankenstein. It's like walls of harsh noise, right?
Right.
So it's like, oh no, I'll listen to a fucking Incapacitance record because it's that perfect sound for a half an hour.
And that's what you called the powerful minimalist deconstruction of the harsh noise object. Is that accurate? That you took this?
Exactly. Yeah. And again, this is all coming from visual arts, right? So it's like really, really trying. And luckily, I had colleagues and peers at the time that were really down with the idea as well, with the idea of kind of like a manifesto.
Yeah.
So like all the way to Phil Blankenship putting out that Militant Walls book.
Yeah.
Which I don't know all the people listening have looked at that book, but that thing is like a must-have.
Yeah. It's I was lucky enough to see it at Tommy's house, and it's just a book like of 200 pages or whatever, just says Militant Walls on every page. And then also, I don't know if this was you or Phil's other one is Violently Pure, right? Was that his book?
That it's all him. The Militant Walls. Yeah, it was all Phil. So like at that time, it was incredible to have like, again, peers and colleagues that are down with the quote unquote the cause, and just being like, because all it was back then was like you have all these incredible acts like Sickness and Cracked Steel and that are just, and Panger, that are incredible at doing like rapid fire changes that I always think of like cracks, it's like these incredible cracks of sound, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then but the more you listen to harsh noise, you obviously your tastes get really, really, really streamlined, which I think is one of the most incredible. So there's a lot of people that hate it. They're just like, I don't, all these fucking subgenres, they drive me fucking crazy. You should be able to do what you want and all this shit. And I'm always just like, it's fucking the most exciting time in harsh noise right now because everyone's listening so carefully,
right,
and hard, appreciating it to extremes that no one ever imagined. So like, because back in the day it was like, oh yeah, I'm super into harsh noise, I'm super into Merzbow, I'm super into macro, I'm super into like pain jerk, I'm super into K2, I'm super into New Blockaders, and I'm like, those are all completely different groups now, and that's because all of us have been listening so closely,
right? And I guess I'm curious to hear your thoughts about the phenomenon of like noise as a spectral phenomenon, like really just like what we call noise in like a scientific sense, like randomly generated like white noise or filtered white noise or processed white noise, versus like the introduction of musical elements or dramatic elements like cuts, like I guess, tones. I mean, a lot of times noise gets, certain artists get credited as being emotional or bringing emotional or narrative to their work, and they're harsh noise artists. But I feel like a lot of times what is actually bringing that perceived emotionality is introduction of some sort of traditional musical element, even if it's really still abstracted, but like some sort of drone underneath, some sort of, you know, kind of thing that gives a sense of rhythm.
Yeah, I mean,
and how that varies
from
pure harsh noise in sense of like sound that is really just generated from like spectral crunching noise being processed, and if that pure harsh noise, how that can be used to have some sort of emotional or like narrative impact.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like I talk about that a lot with friends of mine, and like, you know, and colleagues as well, where it's kind of like, again, it's like what entertains you? Like, should it entertain you, or is it all about the idea or whatever? But all the way down to like, it's kind of like, I mean, we always joke about like the kind of like a hierarchy, like a pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the entertainment pyramid. Kind of. So it's like the entertainment pyramid, and like so, you know, it's the top of the pyramid are people that maybe just appreciate silence. I don't know, whatever. Yeah. One down is like people that are completely entertained by like a tone, like an unbroken tone.
Yeah.
And then you go one down is like that tone warbles or cracks or turns into like a line of like cracking noise, because that cracking noise is adding drama. It's adding movement, you know? So it's kind of like, and I'm still thinking of it as sound, you know? So it's like, and then the more you add, the more you're like, you know, and these are all things that people appreciate on different levels. It'd be like, I'm not a huge fan of feedback.
Sure.
You know, I've used it in like live performance. You know, if you're going through like a PA and you're rocking out, and you know, the feedback can be enjoyable and fun or whatever. Yeah. But I've never been a huge fan. But then you talk to guys like Keith from Taint.
Yeah.
And he's like, I fucking love feedback. Yeah. I love hearing it for hours. You know, and you're like, awesome, you know, like, you know, that's, well, that, you know, and then it's awesome to know that people have a head wrapped around singular sounds like that, you know, so it's all different, like taste, it's all subjective or whatever.
Right. But that's even like a more reduced tonal experience, because with white noise, with crunching harsh noise, for example, you still have a quite broad spectrum of sounds you're intaking, but then feedback is like one.
Saying, I mean, and for me, when I like kind of inject like samples or like, you know, or music from like a classical ballet or whatever, it's always, for me, it's always like, it's just the idea. I'm just like kind of injecting it with the idea. Almost like a note, you know, like an ass.
Definitely.
So
I definitely see it that way.
So and I think of all the terms as like, because we all, I mean, we're harsh noise artists. I don't know why people get so worked up over super intense rules, because we're all fucking obsessed with extreme manifestos and shit. You know? Like, I always love the idea of just like, I'm going to fucking follow this manifesto, even if like I'm glaringly breaking rules and shit, I'm a weirdo that's still following this manifesto. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, like everyone's completely obsessed with all the manifestos that the futurists wrote, you know, and then, and, you know, and so it's like, so I love that, but it, you know, it kind of keeps you in tune with what you want to do, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
like
I feel like your most recent work is really fascinating, because it almost goes in that direction of pure tones. And I mean, I was listening to the the unitard Apex release on No Rent, and it's almost as if, you know, that the harsh sound in that is almost broken down into like 5 or a handful of specific points, like frequency points, where it's almost like percussion. It's like, you know, you hear different points on different levels of the spectrum kind of percussing against each other, but it's really, really limited. It's like such an extreme approach to like this white noise or, you know, pink noise. It's like really reduced to almost percussion.
Yeah, it's been the last like 2 years or whatever, where I've just been doing the Women of Shakespeare's plays, the Wisp works and the Richard the Third works, and that one, and yeah, the unitard Apex. It's yeah, it's been like really, really exhilarating to be able to finally kind of like piece down exactly what I want out of like a harsh sound release. And it's just like, yeah, those like singular like snaps and cracks,
mm-hmm.
especially in like I have yet to do that live, so I can't wait to. I mean, I've done things like that live, but nothing so kind of like deconstructed down. But I can't, I'm pretty excited about being able to hopefully play through like a massive PA where you can hear those snaps like like these giant cracks. It's kind, it's kind of like, it always reminds me. I remember watching Karkowski in Portland do that really, really, really slowed down massive fucking snaps, and like, and a bunch of us, me and like Nick Wainwright and Josh Rose and a bunch of us and like Gordon Ashworth and all of us were just like fuck, like, is that what it's all about?
Yeah.
Like, do we just hear these some cracks, like the snap of a whip or whatever?
Yeah.
And then it's just like, yeah, and if I can fucking mentally like deconstruct that into like that's what's purely entertaining me, then like that's awesome, Yeah. And I always kind of, I think back to like when you're when all of us are like at our first like harsh noise shows and we don't know what we're in for, know.
Sure.
And I remember I was at an early show with Sickness and or Kelly Churko on the Hospital Guys, and you're watching your first harsh noise sound check, and you really don't know what you're in for, know. And like, especially with like Chris from Sickness, he was super good at doing sound checks that were just like massive, just like crack. If I remember correctly, he'll probably be like, Sam, you're an idiot. I never did that, but that's what I remember, So it's kind of like
how you remember it.
And then they're like, good, and then you're like, holy fuck, what happened, And then like, and of course, when the night goes on, you're hearing all the acts and everything. But for some reason, I always just remember those fucking early sound checks, just being like holy shit. And then like, so now I'm always, so when you're able to play through like a big PA or whatever, I love, I'm always kind of love the idea of like replicating that feeling. I remember I was playing through this fucking completely irrational PA with Vomir and Richard Ramirez in Houston a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was this guy put on this show where he was just like, okay, I'm just going to fucking spend as much money as I can. I'm going to power this massive like Motorhead style wall of PA with powered from like U-Haul trucks parked in the parking lot. Like, it was fucking insane. Even Vomir and Richard, we still talk about it. We're like, you remember that night? Like, wow, that was the loudest thing in the world, And when we got there, he had a wall of fucking like amps behind. They were all like lighting up and like, and again, he had alternate power generators coming from like U-Haul trucks in the parking lot. And there's a video online playing live just for us three. And he was just like, well, if I'm going to fucking fly Sam in and Vomir and it's the first time all these guys have all been with each other, I'm gonna fucking go all out or whatever.
Wow.
And he played as well.
Sick.
And and my brain, I feel like a fucking asshole, but my brain just turned off. I can't remember his name. Jonathan, I think. Mm-hmm. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, there's this really good video online where I'm like playing that show, and I always work a lot live with like gating, like lots of like really, really, really gates. And I remember I did this. Yeah, there was like a gate that went to silence.
Yeah.
And it was, like cracking, and then it went to silence, and then all you could hear this dude in the crowd just go, Jesus Christ. And all of us were like, yeah, man, like this is like, when you're like playing through a PA that's almost just like, this isn't good. Like, like we're not, right, you're like, but I remember I played through like Lashin from Flat Gray. He used to just like have the most irrational sound systems in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and because it's Lashin, like it's go big or go home, right? Yeah. So it's like, so I remember there was one show we played at this pub, and I remember I was an idiot. Well, not an idiot because it was fucking great, but I like had my head like kind of right by like one of the speakers all night or whatever, and when you're just like, yeah, this isn't good.
Yeah,
this is bad. And then it fucked up the hairs in my ears so badly that I was barfing for like 2 days straight. Like I was barfing getting into the car to go home.
Whoa. And
then I couldn't skateboard for 2 months.
Whoa.
Because my balance fucked up.
Holy shit.
And then we're laughed about it for months. We're just like, yeah, I mean, that's a last show. Like, but
Jesus
yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
That's great when like the jags of silence in like gated harsh noise, that silence can be like, almost as it can be even more powerful as, cut up artists, again, they'll intentionally, put in those moments of silence for some sort of dramatic tension or something like that. But being able to hit those between like a continuous block.
It's a thing. It's a thing of masters, it's like the first time you see like Sickness or any of those guys, like Stimbox or all back in the day. It's like, I mean, that was a thing for a lot of those guys back then. It was like who the fuck can master their gear the most, like, and again, it's going right back. I mean, these guys were, again, I don't want them to kill me, but I think of it as like those guys are playing with incredibly cracked out, distorted lines of different sound. Like, especially when you see Chris now with his modular, I swear, everyone's like, oh, modular. And then it's just like, yeah, dude, like, it's even more cracking out than his, like,
for sure.
Blocks,
For sure.
Yeah, it's the silence. But again, the silence versus the like pure raw sound is just people building the textural kind of like scope.
Yeah.
Scope.
So
but to bring up your point as well, it is one of those things where it's just kind of like, it is one of those things where it's like when you go to for a whole other fucking example, there are a lot of people that will get caught up in and kind of like not, like drama or whatever. So especially when you go to maybe more of an ambient festival,
mm-hmm.
and you watch maybe 5 acts in a row that all do the same story arc.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
We start out with some quiet sounds, build, and then
epiphany rock.
And then we all end up with that same sound. And then when you watch 5 of them in a row, you're like, this is more, this is music. This is story, Whereas it's always kind of like, well, what if you came in hard in the middle? Like, what if you cut that part there? Are you going to get the same? Or do you need your story arc?
Right. 3 new tapes coming soon on White Centipede Noise: Moosehead, The Doors of Perfection, Vincent Dallas, Phantom Clank, and Spring of Life, Brown Bed. Also still available, CDs from Apperpot, The New Boyfriends, Jason Krumer, KM Tupfer, Sewer Election and Trix Rosette, Lacerations compilation, as well as the final copies of Jeff German and Aaron Dillaway Casual Collision CD and Alter of Fly's Otterblick Triple LP. Also now offering free shipping on all orders of 100 euros or more at whitecentipedenoise.com. So shifting gears a little bit to the content of your work, you're known for your very explicit, obsessive focus on different themes. You've kind of had almost periods, and you've kind of incorporated things together. And they're all based on your personal obsessions and interests. Can you kind of outline the progression of these obsessions and maybe what I might call fetishes, not necessarily in a sexual sense, but these fetishes with material objects or phenomena, kind of going back to the beginning as far as you can remember, like childhood?
Yeah, I mean, it all kind of started with, for me, like in my life, like it all started with sharks. Like that was the first thing I was ever interested in as a kid. I still have I have this crazy collection of rubber sharks. Mm-hmm. And I still have the first one I ever got when I was like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old. Anyways, when it comes to like sharks, like I was born in 1973 and Jaws was coming out. And so here's like this little kid, you're just completely inundated with shark exploitation, which is what it's called now, like man-eating shark magazines and everything. And that was like a deep-rooted thing that just isn't ever going to go away, So when I started working with like harsh noise, especially in the 90s, when I was still just doing kind of more like classic golden era harsh noise. It was like, okay, dude, you're like, because I was like, when I was doing my BFA as well, or when I was in art, like, the professors were really, really understandably into you being able to kind of like show your personal, like in your work, you know what I mean? Like, well, what does this art have to do with you? Like,
right.
Well, what are you obsessed with? What are you interested in? What do you love? Like, what do you, and then so I was always like, okay, well, I want to express all my interests and then kind of like integrate them directly. So even if like my first tapes are like Creature from the Black Lagoon and lots of like shark stuff and Jalo films and it was like, so it was like, well, I'm not just going to fucking record some harsh noise album and then just say, this is dedicated to Salo and this is dedicated to this.
Yeah.
It's like, no, like I want this to be completely based on its sounds, you know what I mean? So like so even I always love the idea of like, even if it's completely subconscious, that's why I like putting those notes in the releases. I want people to like realize that all of the sound you're hearing is completely taken from it's the topic, like it's like what it's about. So any time you hear anything move or crack or like any texture or any like movement and sound, that's coming, like, you can't ever forget, that's coming directly from the source. That's coming directly from the interest. Yeah. Right. So it's like, so even if it's only subconscious, it's like, holy, like the most extreme example recently is that Unitard Apex tape. So that's like one of my favorite neoclassical ballets is the Legend of Love. And it's like, so I'm going to completely deconstruct this audience live recording of the Legend of Love into like this snapping, like exactly what I want to fucking hear. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that is, for me, really important is that it's coming directly from that ballet and nothing else. Yep. Yeah. Back in the day, I'll like use source and then I'll use like, like other things that I had, like various shaker boxes to complement it. And, and you're always just kind of trying to keep in the theme or whatever. Right. Yeah. But it's been great to be able to like like deconstruct things so people are like subconsciously appreciating the way a film moves, or a ballet moves, or a shark moves, you know?
Yeah. How much emphasis or attention do you put on like the technical aspect or sides of it? Like, for example, like signal path, like is it important to you that this signal is 100% pure and doesn't have any additional noise or whatever in it, you know?
That's been the beauty of being able to like kind of like in the old days just kind of figure like a bunch of things out with colleagues like Nick Wainwright,
Mm-hmm.
where you just completely get obsessed with gait
Mm-hmm.
and like bias and all that, and like really get your head wrapped around like vintage fuzzes and the way biases can be like as an application. So that was like a really, really nice way to be able to take exactly the cracks and the textures you want from your, you know, so if that's what you're asking. So then that's when you'll have like, maybe you'll have a bad recording session where you're just like, I cannot fucking get rid of this bullshit that's coming from this thing. Like, what's going on? And that would be like the technical aspect.
Yeah.
You know?
So, you know, sharks are your original obsession, and it's reflected on a lot of your releases. Sorry, go ahead. Say it again.
Oh yeah, back to the original question. Yeah, and then it was like, you know, and then obviously like, you know, like getting into the sexual and the fetishistic and everything like that. And then even with that, I was just like, what do I fucking like about what I like? You know, like all the way down to like cleavage and like, you know, like deconstructing that as well. But and then what's been and then as I touched on briefly, like jaw hollow film, and then the thousands of dead gods recording, and then the Decima Moss or Decima MAS recordings, where it was just like, especially for that one, it's like, no, I'm fucking getting in the water, I'm getting the Italian full face mask, I'm getting the 50-foot cord that goes down into the ocean, I'm going to be scraping around in the cord, you know what I mean? Like, I want this to be like the real fucking deal, you know, like, or all the way down, like ocean fishing. Like, what's it going to sound like if a giant, like a lingcod takes this lure with a contact mic on it, you know? Like, like I want it to be like in it, you know? Like, so
what does that feel like to embody, to get as close as you can to those sources of obsession, like to be in that suit, or to be in those, you know,
or to like be in like a shark cage and all that stuff?
Exactly.
It's amazing. It's like, okay, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, for lots of us, it's like, you know, like art is like a life experience, and if you can translate eventually these really, really sincere interests into like the eventual sound, and you know that it's been completely built on actual physical experience as well, that it adds a whole other kind of like, you know, kind of like adventure, like life adventure in harsh noise, you know? Like when you it's amazing, because you'll be down at the, you know, you'll be down like 20 feet, you know, kind of scraping around on coral and rocks and stuff with like a hydrophone, like a contact mic made for it. And and then that's when you kind of forget, like, oh yeah, I forgot this is going to be a harsh noise. This is going to eventually be a release. So down the bottom, you know, the ocean, like just scraping around and like, you know, almost like playing World War II. Because of course down in the ocean, I've got the diver's knife, I've got the whole kit, you know, and I'm getting like, my mom, funnily enough, or awesomely enough, I recorded a lot of that by my parents' house up on the Sunshine Coast, and they live by all these incredible little harbors where you can just jump in the water off a cliff and it's a sheer drop down,
Wow.
you know, like 50 feet or whatever. So I got her to be in charge of sitting on the rocks with the recorder,
Cool.
you know, and the 1/4-inch cord like wrapped around her arm, so I could just like dive down with this 50-foot cable.
Wow.
And just like mess around, and she's like recording it for me. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Are there
But,
photos of that?
There's no photo. I think there's actually a photo of her on the beach, but all that picture of me with the knife and in the water, she took all those pictures.
Killer. That's
And the
killer.
mic is kind of, when I'm in the water, the mic's with me, but
Yeah.
she was just up on the beach.
Killer.
Or not
That's
the beach, like the rock.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was hilarious. But
So
it worked amazing.
so now your primary focus and interest is ballet, and it has been for some time. And you know, there's a documentary called Tights Worship where you've spoken about it. You know, you've spoken about it a number of times. But why is ballet the pinnacle obsession for you? Why is ballet the pinnacle theme?
Ballet, like I'll tell I've told the story like to like friends and stuff, but I remember my boss, PD of Skull Skates, he knows that I drink a lot of pop, like I drink a lot of Pepsi, and
Mm-hmm.
one day he came in and he loves going to like thrift stores a lot and buying like amazing old stuff. He found me this crazy old Pepsi like advertisement on like this giant card poster.
Yeah.
And he's like, Sam, I got this. It's like this Pepsi ad. And I'm like, oh shit, that's fucking crazy. And then I turned it around, and it turned out that it was actually someone used like this card Pepsi advertisement to mount a fine art poster of like like this incredible Moses Soye painting of dancers, like ballet dancers relaxing against a wall or whatever.
Wow.
And I'm looking at it, it's all like bare feet and like tights and everything. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh shit, like why have I never, like it was under my radar, but it's like, why have I never like looked like this is it? Like what?
Yeah.
Like all of my ideas that are swirling in my head and all the different releases and it's all in the classical ballet.
Wow.
Right? Like it's all there. So, like, okay, I like, you know, it's like the craziest epiphany probably in my life.
Crazy.
So then I'm like, so on my way home carrying the poster, I like went to a book. There's a bookstore chain in Canada called Chapters, and it's kind of like Barnes and Noble in America. Anyway, so I go there on my way home and I'm like, I'm going to the ballet section. I don't even know if there was a ballet section. So I go to the ballet section. There's this incredible book called Ballerina. It's written by a Canadian woman, and it's basically the history of exploitation in the classical ballet.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, you know, I'm literally holding the poster in one arm and like looking at this book, going through it, and I'm like, okay, so I bought the book, ran home, reading the book. Then I find out on top of that, especially because, you know, I've done releases in the past to do with escorting in Europe and the Mediterranean and brothels and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going through this book and I'm like, okay, like the classical ballet is completely rooted in brothel culture and like unfortunately like white slave trade, like really exploitive, you know, and like in Paris and all that, and all the way down to the point where I'm just like, who were these early choreographers, like Marius Petipa and everything, like incredible artists, but like these guys are virtually, you know, I'm not making this up. Like these guys are virtually putting like 20 or 30 women on stage.
Right.
Like these are the guys that came up with the tutu.
Right.
They came up with the tights.
Right.
They came up with point.
Right.
Like all like for the women, you know, and then it was well known that it was like a lot of it was which women are going to go home with which rich men that night. So there's these like really explicit essays by men that went to those shows back in the day where they were just like overhearing conversations all the time, just like, oh, what's her name? Looks incredible tonight. Look at her legs.
Yeah.
That's who I'm going home with tonight. You know, there's like, I've got this, there's a comic I have from like a newspaper, like a French one back in the day, where it's like this smarmy old man at the door of like the dancer's room. And, you know, basically that's the essence of it. You know, a lot of those old, a lot of the paintings of the time as well. It's like, that's the portrayal of that, you know, and a lot of the young dancers were called rats, like petite rats. And they were kind of being groomed to you know, I don't know. Yeah. Again, it's an incredibly, it's almost incredible that a you know, like an apex performing classical art came out of that world.
Right.
You know,
that's wild. Yeah.
So like, the more you read about it and find out about it and its history and everything, and you're like, that's a, you know, so of course the Rita and like past themes and everything that just kind of like culminated with everything else. Then on top of that, you get like you get all the aesthetics and the movement and the completely abstracted lifestyles.
Yeah.
These women have like
sure.
the complete, like the unreality, like it's an incredibly abstract themes.
Yeah.
As well. So all of that was just a massive like culmination where it was just a really easy thing to be like, I can just make my whole life about the classical ballet, and then like have little tendrils, like get, you know, like Shakespeare ballets and yeah. So
do you think that will ever be a theme which is surpassed? I mean, you've said it's kind of like the pinnacle and like that's kind of like it for you, but do you see it evolve from that?
I mean, I literally, it sounds weird, but I can't imagine it, because it's like when you reach like an apex like that, there's nothing really else. Like you know, all the way down to the heavy eye makeup.
Yeah.
And then every time, and your mind is just constantly blown with like all of these, like all of the original designs for like costume and tights. Like you can trace, like if anyone shows me like, oh Sam, have you seen this incredible new these, you know, I'll get a link from a friend, like, have you seen these incredible new tights from like Fogal or Wolford? And you're just like, oh yeah, those are a recreation of ones that came out in the 30s, like, you know, like for this one ballet. Yeah. You know, and you're, so it always is back, you know, like, oh, look at this woman's incredible makeup, it's so insane. And then you're like, oh yeah, that's from that 1920 Diaghilev ballet. Like it just keeps coming back. It's like just when I thought I was done, it pulls me back in, you know, like.
Do you ever see yourself losing interest in harsh noise and focusing purely on ballet in some other form?
No, because it's harsh sound is it's always going to be like kind of like under like the Rita umbrella, you know, like, because the Rita has kind of turned into it's just like a title for my works, you know, like to touch upon those recordings that you brought up as well. Like a lot of them, the recent ones that are really minimal and cracking or whatever. Yeah. I've already noticed a couple of comments where it's just kind of like, you know, the same thing where it's like, oh, this all sounds the same, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, yeah, but each one of these pieces is coming from a completely different source. And I think of like harsh sound in terms of the visual arts, and that it'll be like you're going through a period as well. So it's kind of like Ad Reinhardt didn't just do one black on black painting. Right. You know, Jackson Pollock didn't just do one, you know what I mean? So it's like, of course, it's like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it over like a period. Yeah. You know? And really fucking invest investigate it.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it. So one of the main things about all this too is that I have the ability to like do it. Like I could always do it in the privacy of my own home, but I'm blessed and consider myself really, really lucky that I've got enough people that want to support what I do.
Right.
So I can do these releases, and travel the world and like play them and all that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you described just now ballet, kind of basing your life around ballet, can you tell us a little bit about what your daily life is? I mean, we know you've referred to the fact that you work for Skull Skates, and you're involved in a lot of different things, kind of various, but also somewhat interconnected. And it seems like you have a fairly like synthesized life where you've kind of brought many of your very specific interests in kind of together a way that kind of mesh together. Can you kind of describe what your daily life and daily routine is like?
Well, every day I wake up, I go to, I'm an idiot. I don't eat till usually around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But anyways, I wake up, I go to work, and I work full time at Skull Skates, which is the classic legendary old skateboard brand, Canadian skateboard brand. So all day, what I'll do there is I lay out all of the artwork. I do a lot of the accounting, the bookkeeping, the orders, everything. There's only 3 of us here, including the owner, the boss, and PD. So we're really like tight team. But and then what's just on like a quick side note, like what's hilarious about that is that I've a lot of my like the Rita or harsh noise marketing comes from a pretty deep understanding of how marketing works in the skateboard world.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Yeah. Sure.
So it's like, and then when I work with the guys from like I work at Skull Skates, and I work with so I work with the barrier cult guys a lot.
Yeah.
So then I'll bring them ideas as well. It'd be like this is how we should do it, like this.
Yeah.
Like this is how I do it with Rita. We should do it like this, because this will translate better.
What is barrier cult for those who don't know?
Oh, the barrier cult is a group of guys all the way down from Vancouver all the way down to San Diego. There's like 12, I think. No, maybe like 12 average titled members, like officially titled members. And they're all anonymous. They come up with their names are come up with by like the guy who's like the head of it, but it's all anonymous, so I can't really talk about who they are or whatever. But yeah, they all wear like balaclavas or masks when they skate. No one knows who they are. Most of them are ex-pros, like sponsored guys that are like that are just kind of over the industry. Yeah. So the barrier cult was like a really nice outlet for them to just do anything they wanted. That was a little bit more obsessive and pointed, and then on top of that, the reason it's called the barrier cult is because all they skate are like the barriers that you see on like a highway. So really like tight, violent transitions, and then they've turned that into a whole too, right? But yeah, I work with them. I mean, they're not the nicest dudes, which is awesome because it's not like, oh, I love this pro skateboarder. He's so hardcore and scary, but I met him and he's the nicest guy. It's so great. And I'm like, yeah, it's awesome because like, I mean, one thing about Skull Skates is that it's always had like a pretty intimidating kind of feel behind it. I mean, we're nice enough dudes, but yeah, people don't really like to fuck with us just based on all the stories I've heard in the 80s. Right. Yeah, it's been incredible being a part of this lineage or whatever. Yeah. Being under the umbrella of Skull Skates, being able to do exactly what you want to fucking do. Yeah. No bullshit.
Yeah. So how has that informed what you do with the Rita?
Again, it's like a lot of skateboarders are obsessives, and it's an incredibly independent sport. Yeah. That hopefully stays that way. But it's so you get to see the same patterns with like skateboard fandom and harsh noise fandom. Yeah. You can actually like predict the way people see things and everything.
Sure.
Yeah. And then it's just like, no, I'm going to, you know, and my boss, like PD, is incredible at like just giving just enough information to keep things really kind of mysterious and have like a bunch of like power, especially if you go through like all the ads from back in the 80s.
Yeah.
You know, like the intimidating team, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's this really, really incredible badass gang, like skate gang called like the Jacks team, and those guys are really, really involved in, you know, those guys are around. Vancouver's got a huge like, contingent of them, and those guys are around as well. So it's always great to be able to like meet and hang out with a bunch of those guys and talk to them about early backpatch culture and their logos and their slogans and their manifestos. And
right.
So it all ties in. If you keep your head in the right part of skateboarding, you know, like the more kind of like true part of it, you can translate a lot of those ideas back and forth with the Rita, you know.
How do you feel
when it comes to marketing?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that is huge, and something I was going to maybe mention. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about myself, but the question I asked you at the beginning about, you know, this dedication, like feeling like you're dedicating your life to harsh noise. I remember when I kind of made that realization that it had to be that way for me. It was very much informed by like a lot of these minimal and threatening descriptions that I was reading, like, and coming across like with like the Tronics descriptions and websites, and like finding your disc and the cherry point. But it was like at a point where I was a teenager in high school, and like a lot of my friends, I never came from like extreme music background or punk like that. I was never involved or really exposed to that, but like a lot of my friends were like, oh yeah, there's like noise shows going on. Like there was this kind of like couple year long period where, you know, I guess Wolf Eyes was really popular, and like there were these house shows where it'd be like, oh, this is a noise show, and everyone would go, and it'd be kind of like some drummer and then some electronics on top of it and some kind of like experimental stuff, and it was getting called noise the entire time. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is like music with some noisy stuff on it. But then I kind of got, at some point, accidentally introduced to the cherry point. Because actually my favorite band at the time was called Shoo Shoo, and they were kind of like this experimental pop indie band. But the cherry point did a remix of one of their songs, and it was literally just the song was absolutely 100% gone, not at all to recognize, and it was just this crushing, cascading, you know, 3-minute chunk of harsh noise, and that totally flipped a switch in my head. And that's why I found the Tronics website. I started ordering. I started like being like, oh, this is what noise is all about. So then I was talking to all my friends, like, yeah, like noise shows, noise, and they were like, they were not at all on the same page. It was like, no, like noise is like can, or noise is like, I don't know. But at some point I started realizing I was like totally obsessed with this sound, and I was like, I need to only listen to this sound. I can't do it. But I felt like it was a very like conscious decision that I had to make, to be like, I'm gonna go down this path, but I'm gonna actually have to cut myself off from a lot of like.
Yeah, no, I mean it's one of those things where people, again, it's that argument. It's like, oh, we got to always think outside the box, and we can't. I hate all these different genres, and it's just like, it's what you just described.
Yeah,
how much bullshit you had to go through to get to what you wanted to hear. You know what I mean? It's like, because noise is such a fucking like ridiculous blanket term.
Yeah,
you know.
But it felt like a weird decision. You know, it felt like someone who like realizes they have some sort of like very dangerous fetish or like sexual like preference, and has always like said like, I'm not going to go for it. And it's like, it felt like, okay, I have to follow this, and it's going to fuck my life up, but I can't, you know, not do it, you know. And I mean,
it's one of those things. as you get older, ironically, that danger kind of, you're just kind of like, it's like, oh, I'm actually like, oh, I'm into like this and this, and I'm fucking normal.
Exactly. I don't feel about that at all to this day. I mean, I think that's very silly, but that's how it really felt that way. Like it didn't feel cool. Also, it didn't feel like, oh, I'm gonna get into noise because it's cool. Like I thought getting into noise was cool because all my friends were going to these parties and getting drunk, and like everyone's like noise party and everyone's dancing at the noise party. But once I realized actually what I want from noise, like getting into this is actually gonna be difficult. Simply like it's going to change my life in a weird way. And it's not like it's not like I didn't have friends after that, but it just had a different sort of like,
well, you're basically just into like a different form of art. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's all it is. That is all it is.
Older, one of the dumbest things ever is the people that still play the transgressive game,
Yeah.
The idiots that are kind of like on the outer fringes that think that noise is something that's crazy,
yeah.
Like
whatever.
It's like, what's fucking, there's nothing, once you really get out of your own way and like realize that nothing you're doing is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I remember Martin Sasseville said that one of his greatest fucking quotes ever. I think that might be like a famous quote. I can't remember, but he was just like, if your intent is to shock, then you've already failed.
Yeah. Yeah.
It hits you like a ton of bricks where it's just like, you just like certain cracking, like textures and everything. And it's just like, yeah, but dude, your mom just came home from the mall and she bought a CD of Rain on a Tin Roof. Like,
yeah, same thing.
And then that girl just talked to on some dating site is bragging about some fucking CD she bought on the ferry that's just like recordings of like wildlife and nature,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like noise is like the least. There's nothing. It's nothing transgressive about it. It's not like anti-music and all that bullshit. It's just it's just fucking. It's just It's like when you're at like an NHRA race or whatever, and you're watching people run from pit to pit.
Yeah.
In little drones to watch the cars, the engines get rebuilt and then get fired up. It's like, and they're all like, yeah, It's like, those are fucking harsh sound fans, like maybe more than us,
right?
Because what they're listening to is gnarly and fucking whatever we listen to.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah,
and there's guys. When you dedicate your whole life, if you're just some like dude that drives like a muscle car and you're like a completely, I've watched videos of guys like that, drive like new Mustangs and or Dodge Chargers or Challengers and everything. And I've seen like hour long, I don't know, when you're just like going through the wormhole of the internet.
Yeah.
I've seen like almost hour long videos of guys in their driveways changing little parts of their mufflers on new cars to achieve certain sounds.
Yeah.
And then them standing around the car saying like, it sounds a little too canny. You know what I mean? I'm going to get under there again and put this part, and you're just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Harsh sound, that's like those guys don't know it or don't fucking care. Maybe they care more than us. I don't know. That's an industry that makes a hell of a lot more money than us.
Yeah. But I mean,
the aftermarket muscle car muffler industry, is that the most obsessed harsh noise label in the world? Like
it could be. And I feel like a lot of noise artists or fans aren't really listening that close sometimes, certain ones. And I like to, I place bets with myself sometimes when I notice certain people that kind of get involved or even if they've been in noise for a while, I kind of notice, okay, this person is really, they're in noise because they are involved in noise because it was the most, it was the next most angry thing, like after metal or after like whatever, and that's their reason for getting into it. But I always place bets, okay, how long until this person disappears from this world, because that doesn't last, that doesn't.
it's one of those things too, where it's like you and then you get old enough where you start looking at exactly what you said. You even look at some of the most classic fucking bands and projects of all time, like back in the late 70s, and it's like these are all those. I guess everything they did was just steps before they ultimately just wanted to be a pop band.
Yeah. So that brings me to my next question.
Every one, and you're just like, not everyone, but was your whole goal that,
Yeah. That brings me to my next question. You had like what was, I think, quite a legendary internet moment, because you joined Instagram kind of later to the game. And you surprised the hell out of me, and I think a lot of people, because you made a meme, and it was like a drawing of like a mock-up of two different t-shirts, and one said "Keep industrial out of harsh noise," and the other one said "Techno is not sound art."
Yeah.
What are those statements about?
As like a preface here, it's like the industrial shirt doesn't say industrial music sucks and everyone that listens to it is a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what it says.
Yeah.
It says keep industrial out of harsh. Both of those shirts came out at a time when things were getting really wacky, like getting strange, And it was getting to the point where like things needed to be reassessed because like every second harsh noise project I was getting recommended were maybe 5 minutes of like crushing harsh noise that would just turn into like an industrial beat.
Yeah.
And then like, but it was all the way down to like playing shows and having people be like, "Oh, you should have this artist open for you. He's the most crushing harsh noise artist right now in that area." And I'm like, awesome.
Yeah.
And then like same thing. 3 minutes in, you're like, "Yeah, this is fucking great." And then suddenly, and you're like, "What the fuck?" And then you see the crowd shift.
Yeah.
And you see some people run up to the stage and start doing this, and you're like, "What's happening?" But it gets to the point where it's like, when it started turning into false advertising, that's when I was like, like, "Oh, look at this shirt." And then let's, like, let's do this shirt. And then, and you're just seeing, again, it's like going back to like the entertainment thing, Right. It's like maybe you're not. I mean, again, it's like people that are into an industrial are into an industrial, but just don't fucking tell me.
Well, what about the people who say
like harsh noise?
What about the people who think that it kind of evolved from industrial?
See that I mean, then there's that too. I mean, like that is just like the biggest misnomer. Fucking like reevaluation of history. I don't understand that. I mean, it's like how like like with like the like the futurists and then in the 60s you had artists like Ben Patterson and doing like the paper piece when played at like really insane volumes is fucking gnarly, and Philip Corner's a long time ago Aaron Dillaway got a hold of me and said, "Dude, have you fucking heard this Philip Corner track, an electronic cantata, the Images of War, like Black Hole?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Dude," like, and it's like crushing, like incapacitance style harsh fucking noise. And then like Wolf Vostell, like and these are like, we're talking like 1968, 1963, like Wolf Vostell doing like the decollage, and then even doing like Mauthausen Orchestra style crackling, like radio crackling with the radio decollage, and then Max Neuhaus like doing Fontana mix feet, you know what I mean? And and then even in the later 70s, you have like the Haters, like GX, and you have like like Walter Marchetti or Marchetti.
Yeah.
And they're all doing, and all of that is crushing harsh noise,
Right.
like more harsh noise than like what we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, but like, so I understand that there was like these industrial groups like Neubauten and all that kind of stuff, but it's like, I mean, but it just, when you take a step back,
Yeah.
you know, and you out of your own way and you look at what a lot of these industrial groups were doing, was they were kind of like, and it's not like they weren't conscious of it, you know, because I mean, a lot of these guys were in arts school and shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, they were like, well, what would happen if we took, you know, like what Ben Patterson, you know, like Wolf Ostell or whatever, and we added beats.
Yeah.
Or we turned them into pop music. And then we presented it in like a rock band environment.
Right.
You know, which is basically kind of like the crux of it is like, how can we take a gallery piece like a Wolf Ostell and like, I mean, again, like people might tear me apart out of all this shit, but it's almost like, how can we translate harsh, really, really harsh sound art into a rock band environment?
Yeah.
And the only fucking thing that pure sound has in common with music is the formats.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, but again, that's just me and my like manifesto brain.
Sure.
You know, like, and it's like, and again, the shirt doesn't say industrial sucks and everyone that listens to it should die. It's like, it just says like it's the false advertising was just driving me fucking crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like when you're into a really popular band or something, and the fans drive you fucking crazy. Like, yeah, I'd get way more into that and go to the shows, but the fans, oh fuck, like, I can't deal with that. You know, it's kind of like that. You know,
Yeah.
same type of.
Well,
but it's like, but what's ironic is that like I have a deep connection with like industrial. I mean, like I'm from Vancouver.
Yeah.
The dude from Frontline Assembly printed the Skull Skate shirts for 20 fucking years. I know him personally. I talk to him about shit all the time. My brother's boss at one of his sponsors, like, produced all the Skinny Puppy records. Like, I was listening to Skinny Puppy tapes as a kid in grade 5 because a friend of ours, my best friend in school, his brother was a DJ at like a college radio station. So he would make us mixtapes as like little grade 5 kids listening to this shit. I know, you know, but it's like, but at the same time, it's like, I'm always just kind of
aware. I mean, are those guys aware of the rich world of harsh noise?
Yeah. I mean, when you talk to them, I mean, all those guys are, it just seems like they're just completely obsessed with the studio.
Okay.
You know, like, again, I'm totally out of my own thing. I mean, this is at this point, it's just comedy. It's like friends with these guys, but it's like, so I'm talking out of my ass, but it's just like, whenever I have any conversations with them, because, you know, some other friend would be like, oh dude, like, you should ask him to go into the studio with them and you can create some shit. And then he'll come in and we'll be talking, you know, and it'll be like, oh yeah, you know, they just have no fucking interest, you know, like, oh no, I'm going to Germany and play a fucking industrial fest, you know. But yeah, it's anyways, false advertising. That was the only thing that was getting stressed out about. But what was the neat part about all that is that it created a lot of discussion, you know, and the techno thing, because a lot of people are asking about that. They're just like, well, what the fuck did that mean? And I'm like, it was kind of the same thing. It was like, because, you know, I'm neck deep in the Media Arts Canada Council grant thing, you know, and which is amazing and incredible. And I'm so thankful. But it's, you know, you'll have peers that are just like, oh, Sam, I just got a $20,000 grant to do, or you'll hear about it, you know, like, oh, did you hear that so-and-so got $20,000 grant to do a sound installation in a space at this gallery downtown. And I'm like, oh shit, let's go check it out. You know, so we'll go look, and then you go in and, you know, like, and then you're like, oh cool, you got a $20,000 arts grant to fucking make a dance club. Like I don't, you know.
Yeah.
And even if, again, the same thing with the thing, it'll start with like, oh look, like when you walk through this certain part of the room, it creates sounds coming out of here, and oh, it's great. And then, oh no, inevitably, you know, it's just like,
yeah.
But yeah, so that was a whole other part of it, you know. It was, you know, but again, false advertising. Do techno.
Did you get a lot of flack for that, or did people take it pretty? Did they get your statement and your humor about it? Because I mean, it's safe to say that was also humorous. I mean, you were all.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about it, is that it was like, yeah, I mean the joke that everyone, you know, like, that we always kind of laugh about is that, I mean, you can fucking go onto like a noise board and talk about rape and Nazis,
yeah,
all day, and no one gives a, you know. But then once you like attack somebody's taste, that's when the shit,
yeah,
right? So it'll be like a two-page thread in a forum about like someone getting called out as a Nazi or whatever the fuck, or someone that raped somebody at a show,
yeah,
or raped artwork or something, and then it's like, and then a fucking 400-page thread about how Sam's a fucking idiot and he doesn't understand that Throbbing Gristle invented harsh noise, you know, like, you know, like that's.
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes back to that
yeah.
split between, like, I think noise as a subversive or transgressive element that people think are using because they think it's like unpleasant and disturbing.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things too. It's like, I mean, you know, I'm really, I'll admit, you know, like, you know, when I was in the 90s, I was a fucking poser, you know, like, because, you know, it'd be like, Sam, you can't understate how important Big Black was to you and harsh noise. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. It was a nice little gateway, but I was a fucking poser. I didn't know Mauthausen Orchestra existed. Yeah. Like, I didn't know that in 1980,
yeah, Italians
were making like crunching hours of pure harsh noise with no beats and music or anything, you know? And, you know, I was conscious of like Fluxus and everything, but I didn't know, you know, but whenever I would see examples of it, it wasn't harsh noise. Like you have to dig into that, or, you know, to figure out that some of the, like, doing overwhelming walls of harsh noise, but it's like, and yeah, and I'm just like, yeah, I was a fucking poser, you know. I didn't know, you know. I knew about industrial, and I knew it wasn't noise.
Right.
They had noisy parts. Maybe they'll fire up a chainsaw during one of the dance parts or something. You know.
So,
but that was about it.
Moving away from industrial to, you know, you referenced it earlier. You said it was a Frankenstein movement that you're kind of, you know, responsible for, which was like the most pure expression of harsh noise. Was, you know, you made this disc, Total Slitting of Throats. Yeah. Which was a collaboration, and this was like, by my estimation, it was kind of like the first really, really, really specifically static harsh noise wall thing. After there was like a lot of work going in this direction. Yeah. How did that come about, and what was your goal with that release?
I mean, again, I was lucky enough to have these incredible like colleagues that kind of believed in it as well. But it was also just kind of a response to, yeah, I mean, just appreciating different forms of like of harsh noise that you like, and knowing that they're a very definite taste-driven, heavy listening experience. You know, so it's like, and the Walls of Noise thing is basically just like when you're talking, when you're at in your apartment talking with a bunch of friends about noise, it's like, even back in the day, it was like, oh, I kind of prefer this incapacitance CD because it's just a giant wall of noise, quote unquote. You know, it's not a new expression. Yeah. But again, I was just like, being able to ask like Tommy and Dan and Keith and Phil to like, just give me like an hour of your most crushing, like what you think is a perfect tone, and let's just see what happens when I'll get like, I got a friend of mine who was really good with like Pro Tools at the time, to like mix it, and he did an incredible job because somehow fucking hear every different working, right? But so that was just like a kind of like a greater understanding and appreciation of what we like exactly about harsh noise.
Yeah. And I've noticed you're careful to call it wall of noise, because there's now been a genre clearly defined as HNW, harsh noise wall. What do you think about what it's spurred, this movement of this subgenre of harsh noise that strictly follows these specific rules?
I mean, again, it's hard not to look at it and really appreciate it in the fact that there's this giant movement of younger guys that are like hanging out on their own in their apartments or their houses and just completely fucking obsessing over singular tones, and it's like, and I had no idea back in the 90s or whatever that would be a thing, you know what I mean? And it's just like, and people that get all upset about it and like, oh, we need to think more out of the box. We need to be in all this kind of shit. And I'm like, well, how fucking insane is it, and obsessive and crazy and art driven is it that like there's these people, these artists that are just hanging out, again, listening for some of those guys are making, those crazy 10-hour releases, and they're listening to the whole thing, which, and it's just like, that is some fucking intense appreciation of harsh sound, and I don't know if it's completely because of the HNW thing, but Romain was a big part of it. Vomir was a big part of it, where he just ran with that idea, the militant idea, and was just kind of like, this is going to be my thing, and then it caught on. But again, I think occasionally I'll kind of bounce around on like band camp occasionally or whatever, and like, because I always want to make sure that I'm hearing, like, I don't want to miss, I don't want to miss anything that these younger artists or newer artists are doing, because some of them are coming up with some like crackle patterning and everything that is just fucking incredible, and you don't know what they're doing or how they're doing, or who cares, right? But it's like, and I don't ever want to miss that, and like, and so I'll have a look around occasionally just to get like caught up, because it'd be like, and again, that's an incredibly kind of like deconstructed focus on harsh sound that all these newer artists have, that is like really, really, like, I mean, the problem, I guess, is a lot of them some of them are obviously kind of doing it because it is like the crux of like, they're thinking of it in like terms of transgressiveness,
right?
Or like,
do you ever consider that? I mean, do you ever consider that this approach is stunting people's not necessarily creativity? Because I understand what you're saying about this focus and sound, but do you ever feel like sometimes people aren't really listening that close? They're just kind of doing this because in some ways it's technically quite easy and it's accepted and it's established. Do you think that's sort of also happening?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally you'll you'll see like a newer artist that's just like the thing that got me was that, I mean, yeah, of course there's going to be tons of other people that are into like fetishism and nylon and Giallo films, but it was kind of, but I guess it's in it, and it's interesting, I guess, that like the Giallo thing was the thing that drove people the most crazy, because there was always just like all these tons and tons of new acts that were like Giallo noise or whatever, and it was, you know, and the earliest example I know of quote unquote Giallo noise would be like A-Track's Morgue and Richard, right? And then it was just hilarious how like the themes kind of went part and parcel with the sound, you know, which now it isn't, you know, because there's like hundreds and hundreds of those guys out there, and they're all like kind of doing their own thing, right? But I always thought that was kind of like the I mean, again, but it's just, you know, coming from the skateboard world and everything, and you just look at it kind of like marketing,
right?
You know? Yeah, like it was marketing.
Yeah, and I mean, you're obviously a fan of these kind of dogmatic movements, these kind of militant movements. I mean, there was also Wall Riders, the project, right? That was kind of like an anonymous thing, a little bit like Barrier Cult in a way. Like it was like kind of
the Wall Rider thing was putting the sound like completely foremost, and then letting all the peers and colleagues in that world kind of like run with it. The Wall Riders thing was intense because it was, you know, when you're like, okay, fuck it, none of us are going to have an act anymore. We're all going to be under Wall Riders. Are you ready? You know, like,
was that the idea that you guys would?
The most, you know, it last.
Was that the idea that you guys would actually?
It lasted
your own
like
projects?
what? I mean, that was like the extreme. It was kind of like, okay, we're making harsh sound foremost. From now on, no one has an act. We're all under the mantra Wall Riders, and no one even fucking knows who's on any of the Wall Riders tapes. So go get a job and just do that instead. Like, I don't know. I mean, that was so long ago. It was so long ago now. But I think, what, 2 or 3 tapes came out of that? It seems like
I at least know of
Johan,
one tape and one CD.
I think Johan knows all of the history of all that shit.
I remember hearing back in the day who was on the one on Harsh Head Rituals, but I won't say.
Yeah. I mean, which is insane, because it's just like it came out on fucking Harsh Head Rituals, which is crazy, you know?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Now revered as one of the greatest tape labels of all time, right? So
it's
like, so it was a thing. It wasn't just some like,
right.
But yeah, it was you know, it was coming from a time, I guess.
Going back to what you've talked about, the kind of mystique and mysteriousness of like the Barrier Cult guys, and this how powerful this can be, and how this kind of presentation is very powerful and a part of the work. How do you feel about today's age? And of course the obvious question is how social media, but like, for example, like a video podcast like this, like part of my, like, I'm very conscious of the fact that and one of the reasons I wanted to do this is because I found it interesting to make transparent somehow the people involved in this, in a way that, you know, zine interviews allow a very curated, you know, opaque presentation of yourself. And I understand that some people have said they don't want to do the interviews, and I totally understand that. Like, I can totally respect that. But how do you feel? Like, what effect does that have on perception of the work to you? And also, you know, the widespreadness through social media and things like that.
I mean, again, for me, I just kind of think of it as notes. Mm-hmm. You know, like it's you know, that people can kind of like get into like how, you know, how these artists just kind of negotiate themselves around ideas, which I think is really neat. Mm-hmm. So because there's a lot of the conversation has been about ideas and the translation of ideas and everything. So it's just like, it's almost just like, it's notes. It's, it's great. It's kind of like this more kind of like dynamic example of liner notes,
Sure.
Which, I think it's great.
But there's also like a lot of power in liner notes that have like very minimal information. I'm going back to Thousands of Dead Gods. It was,
I mean, it's one of those things.
It was a paper sleeve with the description, like recorded live, like I like based on sources from cage diving or something like that. I can't remember exactly, and it was just this picture of a shark, and I was just thinking, I was just looking at it, fucking thinking, what the fuck, like that was.
Well, that was kind of that was one of those things too, where it's like, especially when you're like a Harsh Noise fan in the 90s or whatever. It's always like, just give them enough, and then they can make up the rest in their imagination. Like
which is powerful.
So I mean, that was coming from a world of like Romer and fucking Taint and everything. But it's kind of like, but I know what you mean. But it's funny because ironically, like, no matter who someone's going to interview on a podcast like this or whatever, you're not going to get the full fucking like depths.
Of course not, yeah.
Like you know what I mean? It's just like, I mean, I always think it's just so fucking insane that anyone we were able to like communicate with Keith like Taint at all in the 2000s. It's like all through the 90s. I remember like Romer would be like, I'd be writing with Romer a lot, and he would be like, I'd be like, yeah, dude, can I get Taint's address? I want to get some. And he was just like, oh, dude, like, he doesn't really talk to people. And you're kind of like, fuck yeah, like, rad. And then so for you, it's just like, when an artist is completely untouchable, but at the same time you don't really want him to be touchable. Like, well, I don't want to, like, and then out of nowhere, I'll get. I think my connection with Taint was he reached out and was just like, oh, the dudes from Bonall want to get a hold of you. Can I give you your email address? And I'm just like, is this Keith from Taint? Like, what the fuck? And then in the conversation, and then suddenly he's on the noise boards, and it's just like, holy shit. Like, yeah, I don't know. But I mean, I might be wrong. I mean, maybe Romer was just fucking with me, and it was just like, yeah, Sam's not allowed to talk. Everyone else is allowed to talk to him.
Well, I mean, he's a perfect example that I think of it now, like, imagine if he were still around, still alive today, and he would agree to be a guest on the podcast, like that.
Yeah, I mean, that even now, that would just be like,
that'd be absolutely insane. I mean, just like, and I think,
like, what's he gonna talk about? I mean, I've hung with Keith a lot and everything
in person.
Oh yeah, and it's like, and although like once in person for like a really cool afternoon of going to spaghetti westerns in the theater and all that kind of shit, so it's like, see tons of other interests and everything, but I know, but again, that's the thing, like a guy as immense in like project wise as Keith was, you're never going to get the full picture. Like,
no, of course.
Like when you
just simply being able to...
I think is great. It's like
yeah. But simply the
but I don't know.
The face, the voice, the body language, like there's so few pictures, whatever. I mean, so few people have been able to such a mystique and such an image and such a mystery about this person.
One of the coolest things about my relationship with Keith was that he was really fucking good at keeping me in line when it came to do's and don'ts.
Okay.
Because he he always kind of just acted in extremes, you know. So it was like, you know, like, oh, I need your opinion on this. Like, don't fucking do it. And I'm like, yeah, but what if those guys are going to be pissed? Who gives a fuck? You know, like a lot of that, you know, like fucking great. And like coming from somebody that was like, you know, like famously well known for just being like, I don't like this deal, I'm out.
Right.
You know? And, you know, like, so immense respect. So it was good. It like kept you like inspired, like knowing that you don't have to agree to everything. You don't have to fucking, you know.
For sure. And that's that's a rare thing, I think, is that people these days are very agreeable and very, very slow to criticize anything, either publicly or even directly. I mean, like, to even like bring up something, if you're dealing with a label or dealing with some artist in some sort of context and there's some issue, either you feel a certain way about something or there's just something to discuss or criticize in an objective sense, I still feel like people these days are very, very careful and almost too careful about addressing things. And, you know, Keith was very direct and public with, you know, criticism and things like that. And that, I mean, sometimes, you know, you read something he said and be like, oh, what a dick. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's missing, I think.
Well, it's better. Yeah. I mean, in the long run, it's fucking better. I mean, you know, like when you have like a personal relationship with like Chris Goudreau or something, you know, it's like, you know, it's like you're going to have the hard edge opinions. Yeah. You know, but there's also an under, you know, there's obviously the under, I mean, that's the other thing is you know, the word subjective isn't really, still to this day, isn't really thrown around enough. It's like,
right. Yeah.
It's like some like gatekeeper dude's opinion about an album just doesn't mean anything. A lot of the times it's like, oh, this was the worst album ever made. I fucking hate how it sounds like this and how it sounds like that. And then it'd be like, okay, awesome. Because everything, a lot of the times you'll be like, yeah, I know everything that guy fucking hates, I'm going to buy because the things he hates about it, I love. So it's fucking perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I remember back in the day, there was one dude, I can't remember who it was, but it was, you know, back in like the noise boards, and he would just like review noise, right? Yeah. And he was clearly, I think he was clearly just more like an industrial guy, like a death industrial, right? Yeah. And he'd review harsh noise all the time. And he would just hate it. Like, this is fucking garbage. To the point where you're like, why are you even reviewing it? Yeah. You obviously just don't like harsh noise. Like, quit fucking reviewing it. Yeah. You know, it's like, that's where there's that problem with this crazy noise umbrella. Right. You know, like, I don't think you like noise, man. I'm sorry.
Right. Because it's very true that something like crackling, dry, harsh noise is very, very different than, you know, airy, dark synthesizer stuff. I mean, they're both valid, but they're not the same. They really don't have anything to do with each other.
Occasionally you have to look someone in the eye and just be like, dude, like, I don't think you like noise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people in the noise scene that don't really like noise.
You know, like, really it's not it's like from all the patterns and from all your opinions and from everything you talk about. Yeah. I think you like horror movie soundtracks the most.
Exactly. Netflix documentary soundtracks.
Don't go on to tirades. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's kind of hard. It's like, you know, like kicking somebody out of a club. Like, I don't know. And again, it's not an insult. It's just like, I think you need to come to terms with the fact that you might not like noise, man.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's super true. So more people need to admit that.
And then some will be like, oh, maybe you're right. And then they'll, you know, the next time you see them, there'll be some, like, I don't know, prog rock star or something.
Happier. What was it like working with Keith on I don't know how to pronounce the name of the project, but Edwidge.
Oh, Edwige.
Edwidge. What was it like? What was it like working with Keith on that project?
It was amazing as usual. I mean, one of the fucking coolest things about working with Keith was that the sources he'd mail you were always fucking killer.
Yeah.
Like Mania style, you know, just like, whoa, like, fuck yeah. It always like worked so fucking great. You know? And then Dan was a part of that too.
Right.
And Dan's obviously a master, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and then eventually Nolan from Kakerlak was on it for a bit too. Then I can't even remember what the sequence of events was there. But
why was it that Keith stopped being involved?
there was we were supposed to play No Fun as Edwige, and I was doing it as part of the tour. So me and Dan and Nolan were already going to be there, and it was like pretty much scheduled and everything. And then Keith, I mean, it was just a matter of like, it's completely understandable. Keith was just like, they're just not paying me enough to fucking go and make it work. And then I was like, fuck, like I really want to do it Ouija live, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
a little, controversially, we just kind of made the decision, like, let's just fucking like do it with Nolan. Like, who better than Kakerlak?
Sure.
Like, but a lot of people were really excited to see Keith on stage. I mean, that was the other thing. I don't even want to do it. If Keith's going to be there, like, I want to see Mania. Like, fuck that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there was definitely a bit. Keith was pissed. Like, I can't believe you fucking do. And then But it was all under the bridge. Eventually. But
yeah.
Now I just think of it as like, all four of us are just part of it. Just a bunch of dudes that fucking love that we the neck. I wanted to do harsh noise about it.
Yeah, for sure. So you're at work right now. You're at Skull Skates. You're wearing a Skull Skates shirt. There's a poster that's been going around. I've seen it in Cologne. I think it's pretty much international at this point. Of Justin Bieber wearing what I've understood is a very rare Skull Skates jacket. And so I need to know the story about this, because I've always understood that Skull Skates is very elite, very like true, very hardcore. And, Justin Bieber is arguably a symbol of like douchism. Like, I mean,
yeah. I mean, just Justin Bieber. I mean, there's one way to like look at it, and it's just like, he's Canadian.
Yeah. He
skates. He's good at skateboarding.
Yeah.
He hangs with skaters a lot. He knows what Skull Skates is because he's Canadian. I mean, Skull Skates in its heyday was in LA, but so there's that angle, right? But the weirdest thing about that whole fucking thing was that jacket he got, there was only like a dozen of those made for the team only in LA back in the 80s.
Wow.
And as in team, I mean like Christian Hosoi, Steve Olson, Dave Hackett, Dwayne Peters, like PD, the other guy who ran Skull Skates, Feeditas. It was like, so I'm talking like heavy fucking jackets.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to us, it was more just like, who the fuck sold Bieber that jacket?
You probably got a shitload of money for it.
Which of the guys sold Bieber that jacket? But but I mean, it was funny because, again, it comes down to like themes of marketing and like how to, because when that happened, it was incredibly divisive, even in the office here, right?
Yeah.
But right away, I was like, an earlier example of this was when EA Games asked one of the members of the Barrier Cult, Dear Man of Dark Woods, to be in the game, like skate, I think.
Yeah.
And right away, we were like, fuck no. right? But then at the same time, another pro that we totally respect, Darren Navrat, turned out to be in the game. So we were like, oh, Navrat's in it. Fucking sick. Let's do it. But then it turned into more like, it turned into a thing where it's like, when people realized that the barrier cult was in the EA skate game, it went from people thinking the barrier cult was kind of a fringe, fucked up, unknown thing to like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know they were that gnarly, like that big. Like, that's creepy. Like, that's fucked.
Yeah.
You know? Go look at any of our shit and be like, and they're still doing their shit. Like, they're not, you know, like, whoa. Weird. So when the Bieber thing happened, I kind of thought the same thing. I went straight to the same thing. It's like, because we had arguments in the office. Like, should we repost that picture? And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, do it. Yeah. It's like one of the things that Skull Skates is fringe and no one knows about it. It's like suddenly going to be like, what the fuck? Like, arguably the biggest pop artist in the world is wearing a Skull Skate jacket.
Yeah.
People that know the Canadian skateboarder and be, oh, he's just wearing it because he's Canadian, right? Yeah. But it's like, but at the same time, it's like Skull Skates hasn't fucking changed at all,
right? But
now people are like shocked knowing that like someone as fucking big as Bieber Skull Skates is in his radar.
Yeah,
I know for a fucking post, like a billboard.
Yeah,
yeah. It was kind of like right around that time as well. We were at the store, and a hotel concierge came in like wearing the kit, and he came in through the front door, and he was like, I need half a dozen Skull Skate hoodies in these sizes.
Yeah. And
we were like, all right. And he's like, and I've got the cash. He like pulled out a wad, and we were just like, all right, cool. And he's like, and we're like, dude, you know, not to be weird, but like, what the fuck is this for? And he's like, oh, it's for Kanye West and his road crew. we were like, oh, like same thing. It was like Kanye's Kanye, but I mean, he fucking knows his shit. Like, I guess he was in Vancouver, and he was just like, you know, and a lot of those like hip hop artists used to skate.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Skate. Dave Chappelle and all those guys, they know what Skull Skate is.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's kind of neat that when he was in town, he's like, send the hotel concierge down to go buy everyone Skull Skate hoodies.
Yeah, for sure.
We're in big.
Cool. Do you think it's just like? Do you think the Bieber thing, like, has it had any noticeable material effect on the shop, like in terms of?
No, not at all. I mean, that's the most hilarious part of it. I was talking yesterday about where. So it didn't. I mean, you know, but again, I think it put it into like, because we had all these like punk rock bowling fucking older types getting a hold of us and just being like, fuck you guys, fucking sellouts, like, fuck you, like I've been skating for 30 years, you never gave me a jacket and all this shit. And it's like, yeah, they all thought we sponsored Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
You know, and we're like, no, it's the opposite. Like, he fucking went out and found that fucking jacket.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, yeah, it's just this fucking stylist. And I'm like, I don't know, like, he skates. He fucking skates.
Yeah.
You know, like, he knows this shit. You know, but again, it's just people that don't get it.
Yeah.
It's like, because they were scared that what they thought was hardcore was going to be diminished because a really popular artist wore it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the opposite. Now it's even more intimidating because they just found out that this super true gnarly company is actually on people's radar.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't think of it right like that. You know, it's just like, whoa, like, they're actually okay. You know, and then they'll go back to our website and just be like, oh, they haven't changed at all.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the key thing there.
Yeah, that's awesome. A few patron supporters submitted some questions that they wanted me to ask you, and
cool.
First one is by a friend named Sisto Rossi, who lives here in Cologne, and he was wondering how the Ross Bay metal scene, Blasphemy, Conqueror, etc., have had an influence on your work as the Rita, if at all? Or what connection you've had with them throughout the years?
Personally, I got to hang out with, amazingly, I got to hang out with Ryan Forster quite a bit when he lived here still. Because I'd go to his house and just buy albums and stuff off him.
Cool.
Because he had like a distro. And Dan, Sewer Election Dan and I got to do a remix of like a Conqueror track as well. But I mean, what's really neat about Vancouver is that it's a city of complete absolutes.
Yeah.
Like, you have a punk band like DOA that virtually invented the word hardcore, which is insane.
Yeah.
And then you have and then in the industrial gamut, you have like Skinny Puppy.
Yeah.
Which, you know, when you watch their old live shows and shit, they're sketchy as fuck. You know, like my boss's ex-girlfriend is in one of their videos.
Yeah.
Right? But so anyway, so then at the same time you have a band like Blasphemy, which is basically like invented like that really vicious bestial like war metal. Like, black metal. So you kind of have like the absolutes in every genre. So in 1 week in Vancouver back in the day, you could see DOA, Skinny Puppy, and fucking Blasphemy, right?
Yeah.
And what was funny is that they were all kind of like connected, because it's like kind of like the old school kind of like East Vancouver gnarliness, and the connection with Blasphemy that was always really interesting is that it has a super heavy fucking connection to East Van skateboarding and the jacks and everything.
Yeah,
because all of the original recording sessions and everything were all like, that's why they in their thanks they thank the jacks and Carlos Longo. And
sure.
And I remember hanging out here in the store when we put out that Blasphemy deck, which was super controversial because people didn't get it. They didn't know that Blasphemy comes very much from a skateboarding background. It's like when we did that Beharit deck and just getting our minds blown that all three of the guys were all vert skaters.
Yeah.
You know, sending me pictures of them like in palm tree fucking Bermuda shorts doing head high backside airs on vert ramps and shit, like literally a year before Beharit started.
Sick.
And then like Vaz from fucking Black Witchery was hanging out in the store, and he was just like, we used to sell skull skates at the skateboard store my parents ran. Yeah. You know, and we're just like, yeah. So when like Jeff from Blasphemy came in, and we were doing the decks, we were like working out all the deals and everything, and it was really fucking amazing to hear him and PD just tell the old fucking stories. Like, like one of the dudes from the Dayglow Abortions set it up so Blasphemy could record, and they hooked him up with all the Z, and it was just like, my mind was just like, and then like finding out that Carlos Longo, who skated for Skull Skates, was actually the, I guess he would go down to America a lot with this other dude, Scabone. They would go down to Seattle, and they were the ones that would buy metal records, bring them back up to Vancouver, and then all those guys in East Van would hang out in one of their houses and listen to these records and just get all their minds blown. Yeah. So it was just completely fucking insane to find out that Carlos Longo is literally ground zero for extreme metal. Like, you know, and then I was always just like, well, how did you guys? So my brain was just melting, right? And then one time Carlos was hanging out in the store a while ago, and he was just like, oh, I need to get one of those Blasphemy records, Sam. Can you get me one of those reissue records? And I'm like, yeah, man, totally. And then he was like, yeah, my girlfriend drew that logo, the Fallen Angel of Doom logo. And I'm like, what? You know, like Carlos Longo's his fucking girlfriend. Yeah, okay. Like, crazy. Like, shit, you know. And then like, so anyone's weird misnomers was about like skateboarding and bestial black metal was just completely thrown. It was just like fucked up because it's like, go read the thank you list in Fallen Angel of Doom. Sick. You know, and it was like, so if you're into extreme music, ground zero is the Dayglow Abortions. Crazy. Is what I found out. So that's basically, which was funny. Again, I might be getting it all wrong. It was really intense and a lot but getting it straight from the horse's mouth and like finding out how deep BMX skateboarding was with all those guys was crazy.
Another person asked if a musical background or musical theory knowledge is important if you're working with noise.
Again, for me, it's incredibly important for me to only work like through ideas that I learned in the visual arts. It kind of keeps me in tune. Mm-hmm. Like it keeps me on the straight and narrow. Mm-hmm. So no matter how much it might or it does, I can't let myself think it has anything to do with music or the musical world. And and the more that I just like translate everything I do through the visual arts and art history and everything. That would be my answer there. It's like a rule. It's like a steadfast rule.
Yeah.
Even all the way down to the musical samples and everything. That's just all like that's notes. Like that's like ideas and notes.
Yeah. I have a question, and I hope we don't run out of time here. But I have a question. You've talked sometimes about specific releases, certain lines, certain textures. Do you feel like you have a photographic ear, or do you feel like you hear lines of harsh noise like you hear melodies? Do you memorize them like that?
No, but I mean that's part of it. Is like, especially like in conversation with guys like my good friend Ted Burns. It's like you're always looking for that rapid fire abstraction, you know. So it's interesting you bring that up, because so the key of that is like you always want to be kind of left off your. You always want to be caught off guard by the actual strikes, like the individual strikes. And talking with guys like Ted about it a lot is really interesting, because it's like a snap or like a crack, like a texture line is very like, it's incredibly percussive. And I've written about it before, just how jealous I am that I mean, I do what I do and I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm always just like someone that does it percussively is kind of like, for me, it's kind of like the be all end all, you know?
Yeah.
So it'd be like Chauncey or Ted, you know, where it's like, it's physical. Yeah. You know? Right. But that's the thing, that all of those works, it's always like the different snaps and everything always kind of catch you off guard. I think that's part of the art of it, though. Yeah. With the technique and the art. Yeah. And the ear, you know? Yeah.
What's your favorite live collaboration you've done? That's also a question from a patron supporter.
My favorite, I've got two that were incredibly successful. I did a BTHN live performance with Josh Rose and Kelly Davis, who's the woman that is in the choreography video. But we did a work where Josh and I were literally off stage, like off on the side. I was just in a chair, and Josh, I think, was at the mixer, and Kelly, it was just amplified makeup, and it was Kelly just putting on her makeup and and it was kind of neat because the venue had a full-on, like, for some weird reason, had a full-on, like, looked like an actor's studio backstage makeup mirror. Cool. Cool. And we didn't even plan it that way, so that worked out incredibly. Yeah. And then the other one would be with the late great Hannah Meyerberg, who is the dancer artist and dancer that was on the Gums Audio LP. Right. It was the first time I got to work with an actual point shoe dancer. So she had a complete understanding of all the themes and thematics, and she was an incredible ballet dancer. And I got to do like a live performance with her like with her mic'd up as she put the shoes on and taped up her feet, and then her mic'd up. She actually did the point shoot performance.
Cool.
Yeah, those would be like probably the best like executed ones. Nowadays, I'm really happy and excited about just kind of like doing lots of pantomime personally on stage with like imagery and vinyl banners with images that I trace with hands while I play the noise and shit. Yeah. So those have been great, but
for sure.
Yeah, those two kind of stand out.
Awesome.
Whereas and the other thing is they worked.
Yeah.
It was like this is working.
Yeah.
And there's 8 million that couldn't have worked.
Sure.
Know, so.
Sure. I mean, you take a lot of risks with that. There's definitely a lot of room for things to just not flesh out. And to wrap things up, so you can get out of here on time. Can you tell me your top 5 noise releases of all time, and then after that, your top 5 of the last year?
Yeah, good. I made notes because I knew that you'd ask this. So I've actually got 3 lists because I've been like lucky enough to be able to participate directly in reissues of my favorite albums of all time.
Sure.
So it's kind of weird to like just list those, but I want to say them because they are what they are.
Yeah.
So like ones I'm directly involved in, either notes or like helping or whatever, would be like Black Leather Is Anti.
Yep.
Which is like a masterpiece.
Yep.
Dead Body, Love Lo-Fi Power Carnage, obviously. Agula Thor Opera.
Yep.
OBMN Throbbing Pulse.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to do some of the notes for the Ultra Roman Hall Holiday reissue that came out in the box set, which is kind of like an all-time favorite album. And then for all-time releases that, that outside of that, I would say Bruno Cassano, Sappho's Pleasures. Yep. John Zawiz presents his famous Women of the SS.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan of the Women of the SS releases, but the one disc that came out on RRR is like my favorite one.
Cool.
Zone Lord, Marche Noire, Denneries de Versailles, I think it's pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking masterpiece.
Yep.
Thank you to Nick Wainwright for turning me on to that one.
Shout out to Nick.
Mauthausen Orchestra, Second Movement.
Yep.
Fucking masterpiece. And the Sodality Beyond Unknown Pleasures.
Yep.
Cool. One. So so after all the bullshit I've just spouted,
bunch of industrial records.
Yeah, so and then to continue on that path to confuse the fuck out of everybody, my top 5 more contemporary stuff through the last years would be like Snuff 4.
Okay.
Stab Electronics, anything that guy is, I'm fucking obsessed with.
Yeah.
They did a compilation reissue of Born for Righteous Abuse and Temple of Self-Disgust.
Yeah.
I can't stop playing.
Yeah.
I guess it makes it older, but whatever.
Yeah.
But it's still new.
That's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Marco, close friend, arguably my favorite noise project in the world, Caligula 31.
Yep.
Everything about it's perfect. His latest tape, so I just picked his latest, Case Shawitz, Volume 1.
Okay.
Gula Thor, killing the game again with one of the greatest cover art ever for their latest Histers tape.
Yep.
I really love.
Yep.
And then one of my other slowly turning into a really close colleague, but Molest, one of his latest tapes. Anything he does is incredible. He's so jealous of his artwork all the time, his covers and everything. But Cardian Drosh or Volume 2.
Okay.
Again, I apologize if I pronounced it wrong. But that would be my favorite thing of him lately.
Cool.
And then on top of that, I'm lucky. I mean, I'm blessed and lucky enough to work with like lots of colleagues here in Vancouver. If you told me that I'd be living in the same city as Death Squad or MK9, fucking mind. Get to work with Rizalka all the time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All the heads, fucking MM.
Yep.
Going off hard right now. Obviously, very close to Gabby Lasansi. Her work is always the greatest. Ted Burns, anything Ted does, fucking jealous of.
Yeah.
But I'm not part of that world.
You could be.
The nausea, all the Vancouver heads, Anju Worker. I'm probably forgetting names. I fucking apologize. But John and Aaron from Molina, Nick, who I mentioned.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it's been great. It's been great being part of a really, like Josh Rose, obviously.
Yep.
A lot of his work is fucking genius.
Yep.
But it's been great being able to be in that Vancouver environment
for sure
for a long time, where everyone just works in absolutes. You know, it's like great.
Yeah, it's I mean, for me as an outsider, it was always like kind of a very specific mecca in my mind, you know, just like seeing what was coming out of Vancouver was always like really, I mean, I wasn't involved in, you know, I'm specifically just noise. I mean, not even like the other areas of extreme music that you've talked about, but just the noise stuff out of Vancouver was always huge.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, again, it's got this really, really fucking weird history of just always working in like the most extreme, no matter what the genre is.
Yeah.
It's kind of like black metal that comes out of like South America. It's like, what the fuck was going on down there?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap things up? Anything else you'd like to add?
I want to thank everyone that works with me. I feel incredibly lucky that people like believe in what I do to the point that they'll take risks, expensive risks with me, with releases and everything.
Yeah.
And it fucking means a lot. And I've been able to travel the world lots doing this, thanks to the arts grants, the Canada Council, and just everybody. Yeah, so it's just it's been crazy. I mean, it's not going to stop.
Killer.
Which is a big reason why I'm just like, I'll just make harsh noise the primary thing in my life, because it gets me all this incredible experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, we appreciate it too. Thank you for everything that you've done, and thanks for taking the time and talking with me. And
very cool.
Have a good day. Talk to you later. Thanks again for tuning into White Centipede Noise Podcast. Head over to the Patreon for more, including private episodes of Noise on the Run, exclusive photos, video, and audio related to the show, and discounts at the White Centipede Noise mail order. Your support is extremely appreciated and vital to keep the show going.